Shri Krishnan, Director Satish Dhawan Space Centre, Dr. Shivan, Director of Vikram Space Centre, at -1 minute 14 seconds for the launch.
यहाँ प्रमोशन स्थल पर मौसम बहुत ही साफ है और उड़ान के लिए अनुकूल है। हम लॉन्च से सिर्फ 1 मिनट की दूरी पर हैं। यहाँ भूतल पर हवा काफी धीरे बह रही है, यानी हवा का वेग उस मात्रा से कम है जिसके लिए यान को डिजाइन किया गया है। इसी प्रकार वायुमंडल में भी हवा का वेग यान के अनुकूल है। इसका तात्पर्य है कि हवा की गति आज सुबह से मापे जा रहे वायु वेग से कम बदल रही है। लॉन्च के काफी नजदीक, सिर्फ 35 मिनट दूर।
-35 seconds. Looks like light showers outside.
Real time programs activated.
-25 seconds.
Little overcast now.
PSLV is opened.
-20 seconds.
-20 seconds. 15 seconds.
-15. So we will have first the ignition of the RCT at -3 seconds.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2,
RCT
1,
ignition.
0, +1, +2, +3, +4,
Yes,
+5,
we-
+6,
So vehicle
7,
lift off normal
8,
with the ignition of
9,
4 solid strap-ons
+10
and the core stage.
Auto tracking.
Vehicle is majestically going through the
seconds.
atmosphere. 17 seconds into the flight
+20
now.
seconds.
As I mentioned, this little overcast condition, little cloudy
+25
outside.
seconds.
So we are not exactly able to see the vehicle. Is the vehicle at 20 seconds into the
+20
flight.
seconds.
And we heard the announcement, the airlift strap-on
25
also has
seconds.
been ignited at a specified time of around 25 seconds. So now we have the
+40
vehicle with
seconds.
6 solid strap-ons and the core motor going through the atmosphere. And
+45
presently we are
seconds.
at 45 seconds and the altitude is around
+50
5
seconds.
kilometers. Velocity of around
+55
is
seconds.
nearing 1 kilometer per second velocity. So
Plus
we
1
have at
minute.
70 seconds the separation of the ground lead strap-on, which was ignited along with the core solid motor. We're just awaiting for the announcement for the ground lead strap-on has been separated at 70 seconds. And there's a view of the
R1 and 2 in main auto.
time versus velocity plot, which very precisely shows the first stage performance is normal.
First stage performance normal.
And at 90 seconds, we will have the separation of the remaining 2 air lead strap-ons, which were
Plus 1
ignited at
minute, 30
25
seconds.
seconds into the flight.
Air lead strap-on separated.
Yes, air lead strap-on has been separated. And we will have the separation of the first stage happening at 110 seconds, when the vehicle altitude will be around 110 kilometers. So right now we are at 71 kilometers. And a close look at the
PS1
flight
is
parameters
separated.
shows the
PS
pre-flight and
started.
flight predictions are very close to nominal.
+2 minutes.
So 122 seconds now, 94.8 kilometers.
Second stage performance normal.
So first stage separated 110 seconds and the second stage is ignited and the second stage performance is normal. So we will have the burning of the second stage going for almost 150 seconds. As I mentioned, during the second stage of flight, we will have 2 important events. One will be the separation of the payload fairing, which should happen in the next 4 to 5 seconds, 150 seconds when the altitude is
Heat
around.
shield separated.
Yes, payload fairing has been separated. This will be followed by the initiation of the closed loop guidance algorithm,
performance
which
normal.
will steer the vehicle right from the instant at which it has been initiated up to all the way up to the target conditions are met. So 165 seconds into the flight, the velocity is around 2.2 km per second. The vehicle has moved a distance of almost 150 kilometers from the launch base, and the altitude is around 158 kilometers.
Plus
So
3
as per
minutes.
the nominal sequence, we should have the separation of the second stage happening at 260 seconds, which is roughly 80 seconds from now.
नाउ हमारा द्वितीय चरण अपना कार्य पूरा कर रहा है। यह एक द्रवीय चरण है और इसमें हम अपने स्वदेश द्वारा विकसित विकास इंजन का भी प्रयोग करते हैं। यह करीब 800 किलोमीटर का बल उत्पन्न करता है
normal.
और 150 सेकंड तक टोटल ये कार्य करता है। आप जो ये इवेंट्स देख रहे हैं हम अपने स्क्रीन पर, वो हमारे अनुवर्तन दूरमिति और दूरदेश नेटवर्क द्वारा लाया जा रहा है। उड़ान के पथ की प्राप्ति करने के लिए हम विभिन्न भौगोलिक स्थानों पर स्थित भूकेंद्रों का अनुवर्तन दूरमिति और दूरदेश के लिए उपयोग करते हैं। PSLV C36 के उड़ान के दौरान हम श्रीहरिकोटा, तिरुवनंतपुरम और मॉरिशस भूकेंद्रों का उपयोग करेंगे। रॉकेट में लगे एंटेनाओं के माध्यम से रॉकेट के पथ और स्वास्थ्य की जानकारी ये भूकेंद्र प्राप्त करते हैं और यह जानकारी वास्तविक काल में श्रीहरिकोटा प्रेषित की जाती है। इन्हीं प्राप्त जानकारियों को हम रॉकेट के उड़ान के समय आपको दिखा रहे हैं। हम बहुत ही नज़दीक हैं द्वितीय चरण के पृथक्करण और तृतीय चरण के प्रज्वलन के पास।
So 263 seconds, and we just heard the announcement. The second stage of the PSLV C36 has been separated at an altitude of around 290 kilometers, and third stage has been successfully ignited. As you are aware, the third stage of the rocket is the solid stage with 7 tons of propellant, will burn for nearly 110 seconds.
Normal.
And after the burnout of the third stage, it will continue to go together with the fourth stage till the thrust of the third stage totally dies down. And after that, the third stage will be separated from fourth stage, followed by the ignition of the fourth stage. So we are at 300 seconds, and if you look at the flight parameters, which is basically the velocity on the y-axis, and on the x-axis we have the time scale. The red curve shows the pre-flight, and the green one is the one which we are getting the telemetry from the launcher as in the flight. A very close match with respect to the pre-flight and the flight parameters that we are achieving in the flight now. So 320 seconds, and vehicle is at an altitude of 360. The RESOURCESAT-2A mission being a 817 kilometer sun-sync orbit, the trajectory is a little bit steeper than the usual missions that we had earlier during this year, which is in an orbit of around 500 kilometer, where the satellite has to be injected around that altitude.
Normal.
And this mission being 817 kilometer, the trajectory during the second phase of flight itself is a little bit steeper now. So 350 seconds and 5.2 kilometer velocity. Maybe we'll anytime hear the burnout of the third stage, followed by a coasting of nearly
6 minutes.
144 seconds before we have the ignition of the fourth stage. So nominally, after the burnout of the third stage, the separation should happen at 520 seconds. So we are roughly at 375 seconds. View of the Mission Control Center, some of the executives, Chairman ISRO, having a look at the flight parameters and the performance of the third stage in the flight. All going nominal, and as per the pre-flight preparation, the PS3 separation should happen at 520 seconds at 620 kilometer altitude with a velocity of around 5.7, and the PS4 ignition should happen immediately 10 seconds after that. So almost 400 seconds of flight with a velocity of around 6 kilometers. And the final injection velocity that we are looking at is around 7.5 kilometer per second when the RESOURCESAT-2A reaches into a orbit of 817 kilometers.
Plus 7 minutes.
So we're just awaiting for the announcement of the PS3 burnout, followed by the separation of the PS3 at 520 seconds. The PS3 has burnt out. Maybe right now it's in the coasting phase. During the third and fourth stage, in the next 100 seconds, we will hear the announcement for the separation of the third stage from the PS4.
उड़ान से 440 सेकंड बीत चुके हैं। हम 535 किलोमीटर ऊंचाई पर आ चुके हैं और अभी फिलहाल यान की निशक्ति उड़ान यानी नो थ्रस्ट कोस्टिंग जोन चल रहा है। यह कोस्टिंग जोन उड़ान के परिपथ के डिजाइनर्स को बहुत ही एक सर्वोत्तम अवधि चुनने का मौका देती है, जिससे कि हम विभिन्न प्रकारों के कक्षीय अवस्थाओं को इष्टतम रूप से प्राप्त कर सकें। इस अभियान में 144 सेकंड का कोस्ट है, जिसमें कि 134 सेकंड तक तृतीय चतुर्थ चरण साथ साथ चलेंगे और चतुर्थ चरण के केवल 10 सेकंड चतुर्थ चरण के प्रज्वलन से केवल 10 सेकंड पहले तृतीय चरण को अलग किया जाएगा, जो कि अब करीब 30 सेकंड के अंदर होना चाहिए। उड़ान के अंत में, कोस्ट के अंत में हम मोशन क्षण से 521 सेकंड पर होंगे और उड़ान की गति करीब 5.72 किलोमीटर प्रति सेकंड की होगी और यान धरती से करीब 575 किलोमीटर की ऊंचाई पर होगा। हम काफ़ी नज़दीक हैं। किसी भी क्षण आप सुनेंगे कि तृतीय चरण को पृथक कर दिया गया है और चतुर्थ चरण का इग्निशन किया जाएगा।
So 530 seconds, another 18 seconds as per the pre-flight prediction for the separation of the PS3 from the PS4. But as I told you, during the second, third stage and fourth stage flight, we have the
PS3
closed loop guidance. So the timings are basically decided by the onboard computer, and we just now heard the announcement the third stage has been separated at 523 seconds.
PS4 engine
And
started.
10 seconds later, PS4 engine also has been
Plus 9
ignited
minutes.
now. I'll just wait for the announcement for the performance of the PS4. So we reached almost 650 kilometers. And the range parameter that is shown on your screen is 1770 kilometers. Basically is an indication of how far the launcher, the upper stage, has moved from the present station coordinate at Sriharikota.
Fourth stage performance normal.
Yes, the fourth stage performance is normal, and we will have a burn time of nearly 500 seconds of the PS4 stage before it reaches the target conditions, where as per the pre-flight predictions, the timing, the cutoff should happen at 1028 seconds, which is nearly 450 seconds from now, and the vehicle should attain an altitude of around 826 kilometers and a velocity around 7.4. So we are very close to 6 kilometer per second velocity. The vehicle is going right now with. So we have another 1.4 kilometer per second velocity to be imparted. And this is a view of the altitude plot. On the y-axis, we have the altitude. X-axis is the range. And the red curve shows the pre-flight prediction, and the green one is the one which is where the vehicle is presently flying. And on the right side of your screen, you have the ground trace. The ground trace, the way the vehicle has gone from the Sriharikota range going southward. It has crossed the equator, and the injection, this orbit being a synchronous orbit, the injection will happen with an inclination of almost 98 degrees around the poles. So we are at 2,100 kilometer range, altitude 727 kilometers, another 400 seconds to go. Just a quick update of some of the major highlights of this C36 mission. As I mentioned, the RESOURCESAT-2A is the primary passenger, and there are no secondary co-passenger as such in this mission as far as the international customer satellites are concerned. The major reason being the altitude being too high, in the altitude of around 817 kilometers, which is generally not the preferred orbit as far as the smaller nano satellites are concerned. So we have utilized this opportunity to fly some of the payloads which are developed in-house within ISRO. And if you look at some of the changes that has been done, basically is one important change as far as the launcher is concerned is the induction of the remote umbilical filling of fourth stage of rocket, thereby providing a better safety feature and also advantages in terms of time saving of the overall launch phase countdown. As I mentioned, we had only 36-hour countdown even for the PSLV XL vehicle here. So view of the mission control center, almost 700 seconds into the flight, maybe around 300 seconds to go. The second aspect is the secondary payload in this mission is the several newer avionics packages are being carried in a piggyback mode, basically for demonstrating its flight performance. And some of the newer piggyback elements are the miniaturized advanced inertial navigation system, also called as mini AINS, which will provide improved injection accuracies and better redundancy management, and also improved mass and power saving advantage for future missions. So basically what we are planning to fly as a piggyback payload in this mission is only in the standby mode. In addition, there are some advanced micro electromechanical MEMS based smart sensors which are again being flown in a piggyback mode for its performance evaluation. Another interesting thing, if you look at the screen now, so we are at 7:45 seconds, and the pre-flight flight numbers gives a very good indication of how the vehicle is presently moving through. Another interesting feature in this mission is the induction of 5 video imaging cameras. You know, generally all the staging events where we have the separation of maybe it's a separation of the strap-ons or the first stage, second stage of the satellite, it's always very interesting to capture these images from space. So we have inducted 5 video imaging cameras for capturing the rocket stage separation events, namely the strap-on, first stage, payload fairing, second stage, third stage, and the satellite separation. I think once the mission is done, once we get the video feed of this, it will be really interesting to see how the separation has eventually happened in space based on the prediction that I have made it in the ground. So we are almost at 800 seconds. A very close match, and the velocity is 6.4. Another 1 kilometer per second velocity is basically required to put the spacecraft in its designated orbit. As I mentioned, it's around 7.4 kilometer per second. And in terms of the range, which is not a very significant factor, but it gives an indication how far the rocket has moved from the launch base. It's around 3,200 kilometers. And the vehicle has almost reached an altitude of around 806, which is very close to the injection altitude. So from now on, for the next 150 to 200 seconds, I would say the trajectory will be quite shallow. Maybe it's a flat trajectory where by holding the altitude, we are able to inject more and more velocity and thereby reaching the target orbit condition.
14 minutes.
So the orbit injection velocity should be around 7.4, and the orbit that the satellite should reach is around 817 kilometers with an inclination of around 98 degrees.